Sherlock Holmes Program 3A has demonstrated some very curious anomalies. Lieutenant Worf can't launch 4A class probes, and Professor Moriarty is brilliant in any century. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Sirach Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we're doing a review of Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 6, Episode 12, Ship in a Bottle, written by Renee Echeverria, directed by Alexander Singer. This was January 23rd, 1993. Where were you? Everybody, we've got a very special guest. He's brilliant in any century. It's the one, the only, the legendary Mr. Daniel Davis. How are you today, sir?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me here.
This is an absolute thrill for us.
Yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah, we really appreciate you and your work and the time you are spending with us today. Let's just jump into this. First things first.
Sure.
Had you ever watched Star Trek before? Did you know anything about Star Trek before you auditioned, or did you just go in and say, hey, let's see what happens?
No, I was with Star Trek from the very beginning. I was there with William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy. Science fiction has always been something that I am drawn to, and almost in any form, I will watch it. And so I was a fan of Star Trek. And then when Next Generation happened, it was very exciting for me because, first of all, the whole concept of the Next Generation was what was so extraordinary about it. It had begun, of course, with Roddenberry's sort of mandate about diversity. And that was very appealing to me right from the very beginning. And then because Patrick Stewart was somebody who I knew from his work in the theater, I thought, this is so brilliant to have, a Shakespearean actor playing Captain Picard. And so, yeah, I was very aware of Next Gen. And then when I got the call from my agents that they wanted to see me for a role, I was over the moon. So yeah, I remember that day very well.
Wow.
Yeah, first, let me say it's a pleasure to meet you. I've heard your name spoken prior to this in conversations where I hear Professor Moriarty, and I'm like, this guy must be big because he's made such an impact. And so, you hear titles of episodes, you hear names of characters that stick over the years, and the chatter is amongst the fans almost eternally because they are attached to these characters and they're impacted by these moments. And so it was a real pleasure for me to really see, oh, this is the moment where I get to dive into a nice Professor Moriarty episode and get, the teeth of what he's about. And what I really think he's about is an excellent adversary, let's say, or a compliment to Picard as far as a challenge to his intellect. And I believe that's what resonated most to me about your performance. I enjoyed the wit. Obviously, your voice, your delivery clearly emanates from the stage and just all of the presence that you brought. But clearly, for me, the most important was the gamesmanship, the outwitting, and that's what I thought was the best about your performance, because Picard, Data, rarely matched with a challenge that seems like somebody's outsmarting them.
Yeah, it was that I loved the first episode. Elementary, Dear Data was a great episode, but Ship in a Bottle for me is one of the best episodes, period, of Next Generation, and not because I'm in it, but because of the concept of it, and from the very beginning, the combination of the Conan Doyle mythology with the Star Trek mythology was the perfect marriage as far as the fans would be concerned. And the fact that Moriarty started out as, in the first episodes, as a villain, and then things began to evolve for him as he began to recognize his power. And it was a brilliant concept that, he was well, I mean, he manages to take over the ship from inside the holodeck. This is pretty brilliant. and and I loved, because Patrick and I both come from the stage. We had a kind of connection that, I mean, the other actors on the show are stage actors as well, but Patrick and I have even played some of the same parts in the theater. So
Really?
we had a lot. Yeah, and we had a lot to talk about, and I think there was a mutual respect between us that showed through in our performances with each other. And I don't know, it was magic. Everything about it was pure magic. The writing.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. And, I want to say, because you mentioned that you think it's one of the best episodes of Star Trek. And I want to agree to that point, because one of the things that it touches on is the becoming of sentient life, which is respected, I think, in Picard's initial confrontation with you. I think he's really respectful of the idea that you may have become alive.
Right.
And you can see he doesn't want to, he was delicate with how to treat a new life form, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a great point as far as just that debate in itself is something new. That was a beautiful thing for science fiction.
It's interesting, too, because Descartes, who coined the phrase cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. But what's interesting about that phrase is that the first part of it is left off, because in the actual quote, he says, dubito ergo cogito, cogito ergo sum. I doubt, therefore I think. I think, therefore I am. That's the original quote. And it is the I think part is the part that appeals to Picard, and it appealed to Gene Roddenberry as well. There was an interesting thing that happened in the very first episode. There's an exchange where I say, then you must kill me, when he's saying, I can't survive off of the holodeck. And the line that I had originally was, then you must do murder. Ooh. And we shot it, finished it, and left. And I finished the episode and went off and was about to do something else when my agent called and said, you have to come back because they want to reshoot a line. And they had the set still there. And I came back and I said, then you must kill me, because Mr. Roddenberry came down to the set that day, which he very seldom did, according to Patrick. And he said, I brought you back because I cannot have you say that Picard could do a murder. And so this whole, that's how keen Mr. Roddenberry was on authenticity for the characters and making sure that nobody ever committed to doing something. It was like he said to me, we're going to have you back because Picard has promised to find a way to bring you back. So we're going to do another episode with you. And he said, it'll take a while, but we're going to do it. And then they got into that whole mess when they did Sherlock Holmes and the characters without permission from the Conan Doyle Society, right? So it was a lawsuit. It took 2 or 3 years to solve before I actually got back to do another episode. But it was a big Megillah that just an oversight, that no one really connected. Everyone assumed that it was in the public domain because it had been 50 years since Conan Doyle, more than 50 years since he had died. But that wasn't the case. Anyway, I digress. I'm sorry. I got off on a tangent there.
Not at all. This is great stuff that I hadn't heard before.
This is great stuff. Yeah.
And Daniel, there was another aspect, as Sirach first mentioned one aspect of it, there was another aspect that was really important to your character, which was self-determination. And that's a very admirable motivation. You are a villain. You are not only a villain in the stories, you are basically the villain, or certainly the antagonist of this episode and of the characters. Yet you have these aspects to your characters and these motivations that kind of stop us in our tracks. That it's very, we can empathize with this because the first thing we think is, well, yeah, he should have self-determination. Suddenly, this guy doesn't seem so bad. There's a lot of depth to your character, and you played it so well. Do you remember thinking this or reading the script and really thinking, I can definitely sink my teeth into it?
Yes, I can tell you exactly why. Because having played some pretty dastardly characters in Shakespeare, including Iago, for example, my philosophy about playing villains is that the villain is the hero of his story. The villain does not know that he is a villain. He is the hero to his story. So he has depth, he has humanity, he has a reason, and especially in this context, because without his self-determination, he is going to disappear. He's going to cease to exist. And that is something that, as a sentient being, which he clearly has been programmed to be, and as you will recall, he is programmed by Geordi to be someone who can defeat Data. So his intelligence is that of, he comprehends everything about the ship. He knows everything about the Enterprise, how it works, which is why he's able to function the way he is. But all along, he is wanting to stay alive. And that is the driving force. So I think that's my answer to your question, is that a villain is only a villain. Yeah. A villain is a hero to himself. He's only villainous to other people who are trying to say, we can't have you in our lives and in our culture. And, there are probably examples all over the world and all through history of people that most of us consider to be villainous, but they always had a point of view that we never really gave much thought to.
Absolutely.
And let me also compliment you on the way you delivered those lines in this episode, because I noticed that you didn't have a temper or raise your voice or act violently. You were very manipulative in a intellectual, sophisticated way. And I thought that resonated as well. For example, when you told LaForge, I sense a distressing lack of enthusiasm on your part.
Yes.
And then you up the stakes of everything. And I thought that was such a clever, it was diabolical, but so pleasant for me to watch you engage in. I don't know how else to say it.
That's so kind. Thank you.
The other example of that was when you said, I have nothing to lose, Commander. When he said, this is we're all gonna die. And you're like, well, that seems like a you problem,
Yeah, you're so right. Renee's script was so brilliant. I mean, I don't know if he wrote it completely by himself or if it was a group effort or whatever, but his name is on it. So I give him the full credit for having written an absolutely brilliant script. And that touch of humor is also something that's, it goes back to Conan Doyle as well. I mean, I don't know how many of the Sherlock Holmes stories or books that you have read, but Moriarty is a very clever man. It's not just that he is a clever criminal, it's that he's a clever human being. And he has wit, he has charm, he has sex appeal, he has a woman, and he's a very fleshed out character in the books, and Renee managed to bring all those qualities into this episode. It was like being in a play for me. It really
felt that way.
Yeah, it was that well conceived, that well written, that well directed and acted by everybody in the cast. And so it did feel like we were doing a play.
And Daniel,
one of the concepts is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you mentioned the lady, Countess Bartholomew.
Yes.
I have rarely seen a more charming, better actress that just demanded that we watch her. She just blew me away.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the actress Stephanie Beacham?
Stephanie Beacham. Yeah, I can. I adored Stephanie. She has a long history on the stage in England and a long history of television work as well in the States. In fact, she was on Dynasty back in the 80s, I think, and I did 7 episodes of Dynasty, but never got to work with Stephanie. So she brought that same sort of theatricality that I brought to the role, right? And I remember Patrick and I having a funny discussion about what to call her, because her name it was written Regina, and I said, "Are we going to call her Regina or Regina?" And he said, "Well, what do you think?" And I said, "Well, I don't want it to sound like vagina." And he said, "No, we don't want that." But I said, it's interesting, because the only character in literature right off the top of my head that I could think of at that point was Regina Giddens, who is the villainess in The Little Foxes by Lillian Hellman. And then I said, so that's American pronunciation would be Regina.
Mhm.
But Queen Victoria was known as Victoria Regina. So I think we maybe should call her Regina. And he said, okay, just make sure it's always Regina. So,
Pronounce that R real hard.
yes, hit that R.
Yeah,
So that's how we ended up calling her. But most of the time we just called her the Countess.
yeah,
It was safer.
I that name stood out heavily for me. I'm glad you gave me some background on that. I thought, well, they're really committing to this pronunciation. So,
Yeah, it was a funny conversation to have with Patrick, I tell you. And there wasn't anybody, else to talk to about it at that point. We had to make a decision right then and there. So it ended up being Regina.
now you mentioned Gene Roddenberry, and it's very rare that I think anybody comes here and says that they had conversations with Gene Roddenberry outside of the Next Generation cast,
Right.
and the original series. But tell me about that interaction. Like, was that something that was did you know him prior, or did he introduce
No.
himself, or was his character something personal that meant more to like?
I think they were, I'm going by things that I've been told by Brent and George and LeVar and even Patrick, that the two Sherlock Holmes episodes were very special to Mr. Roddenberry, because he had grown up on the stories and the mythology, and when somebody pitched the idea, he was over the moon for it. So I think it was something that he really wanted to get right, and he wanted to do it well, so that as I said earlier, the fans of that mythology would be pleased to see it. And so, I mean, the depiction that Brent gave of Holmes was so wonderfully accurate, and that sort of grandiosity that Holmes has in the books, and so everything about that was working. His visit to the set happened the second time that that happened the time that I went back to do a reshoot, and we had just rehearsed the moment, and it was clear that Mr. Roddenberry must have been watching in his office on the monitor or something, because the next thing I knew, Patrick said, "Hang on just a minute, we have a visitor," and my back was to his entrance, and so I turned around, and I'd never seen a picture of him, I'd never met him, I didn't know, and he came right up to me, took my hand and said, "I'm Gene Roddenberry, I just want to welcome you back, and I have this line change that's very important." And then he said, "And besides, Picard has promised you in this episode that he will bring you back, and Picard never lies." And I thought, wow. So I thought, well, I'll wait and see. And indeed, as I've already mentioned, it took several years for it to happen. But fortunately for me, I always wore my hair really, really long back in the 80s. So I still had the hair when I got the call to come and do Ship in a Bottle. And I thought, thank God, Bob Blackman would kill me if I'd had a haircut. And and the irony is that I had just signed to do The Nanny, and we were about to shoot the pilot about 2 weeks after I came back to do Ship in a Bottle. So I hadn't cut my hair off yet for The Butler.
Perfect
which
timing.
was a saving grace. Yeah. So
Amazing.
the only thing I didn't have this time, I had gray hair when they brought me back to be on Star Trek Picard. And I thought, do holodeck creations get old?
In sci-fi, anything happens. They can explain anything away. Yeah. And
you mentioned a full circle story, though. I think, right?
The full circle story is about my appearance on Elsbeth
as Dr. Yablonsky.
Yes, Dr. Yablonsky. I've done one episode in each of their seasons now. This is their third season, and I've come back for the third season in the same character. But the full circle about it is that in 1985, I was at the Williamstown Theater Festival, and I was playing General Burgoyne in The Devil's Disciple, a George Bernard Shaw play, playing opposite Richard Thomas and Tom Atkins and Patricia Clarkson's first job out of school, and Dylan Baker's first theater job out of Yale. So it was a very good cast. But in those days, the artistic director did not use union people to build sets and costumes. He charged young students to come and work as apprentices all summer long. And they made the clothes, they made the sets, they did everything. And he assigned me, a young guy who had just graduated from high school, literally just gotten out of the 12th grade, and was about to be a freshman at Yale, where Mr. Sakharopoulos, the artistic director, was teaching. And so this young man was assigned to me to be my dresser because I had a very elaborate wig that had to be reset after every performance, and a British Revolutionary officer's general's costume that had to be, steamed and cleaned after every performance. This young man is now the showrunner of Elsbeth.
Oh, wow.
Yes, his name was Jonathan Tollins. He was my dresser in 1985, and he now is the showrunner of Elsbeth. And I did a Zoom audition for an episode and sent it in. My agent sent it in. And 3 days later, my phone rang, and I've had John in my phone ever since. And we've, not seen each other that much, but he became a very successful playwright, and also stayed in touch with emails at holidays and so forth. And the phone rang, and I looked, and it said John Tollins. And I said, John Tollins, my God, I haven't heard from you in an age. And he said, I know. Don't you think it's about time you come to work for me?
Fantastic.
And so he hired me for that. And he has this thing that is, he's trying very hard to do with this series. He's trying to bring back characters in the same roles, except for the villains. He's bringing back people who've been on the show in the first and second seasons to just do a scene. I went in and I did one scene a couple of weeks ago with Carrie Preston, who is the most delightful person in the world to work with. And so I think it's episode number 5 of season 3, but that's the 360 degrees. It's
That's
sort
amazing.
of like that old saying, Sirach, you've heard it. I know you have. Be nice to the people on the way up because you'll meet the same ones on the way down.
Yeah. So, you never know who you'll be working for. And, speaking of full circle, you had somewhat of a full circle in Star Trek as well, with a different showrunner, season 3 of Star Trek Picard. I don't think you ever expected to hear that phone ring again for Star Trek. I don't know if you're aware, but the fans went ballistic when there was a trailer with your voice, and we were like, are you kidding me right now? We all went nuts. Did you go half as nuts when you got the call?
Oh, I went 20 times as nuts, and I'll tell you why. When I read that Patrick was coming back, I got very excited. First of all I had to hear was da da da, and I was in tears. I mean, the first episode, because I'm just devoted to the series, and I'm devoted to him and his characterization, as I am to all of them. They're such a wonderful group of actors and people. And I started thinking to myself, wouldn't it be interesting if I got a call to do it? And I kept my fingers crossed, and I kept thinking, it's going to happen. First season over, no call. Second season over, no call. And so it was December of 2021. We were in the middle of COVID, and my phone rang. I've told this story so many times, but my phone rang. I said, hello, it's my agent. My agent's voice, who I know right away. He said, we've heard from Star Trek. And I said, yes. And he said, don't you want to know what it? I said, it doesn't matter. It's whatever it is, it's a yes. And so he said, all right, I'll let them know. So they did. It was all about Terry Matalas. I found out later that Terry was a huge fan of Moriarty, of those episodes. And he was, in that third season, starting to bring back, I mean, he brought back basically most of the cast from the original series. Yeah. And he wanted to bring back characters that in his mind stood out for, with the fans and their feelings about it. So I flew out, and of course I think the limo driver gave me a COVID test in the car before we brought to the location. I had more things up my nose than usual during that period, and it was. And I never met Terry until we were in Las Vegas, and I just went over and hugged him and thanked him and said, you made my day. I had written a scenario in my head that the episode was going to be about Picard fulfilling his promise to me to make me a real boy.
Finally.
So that was what I had written in my head. And of course, I never saw the complete script. I saw my sides, and I couldn't make heads or tails of who I was in those sides, because I thought, this isn't the Moriarty the way we ended it, because he's gone back now to being a villain. He's there with a gun, shooting guns at people, and that's not the Moriarty that we had before. And I didn't know till I watched the episode, literally, what it was about. I knew what I was doing, my function in it, but it was calling everybody's attention to where Data was and leading them to Data, who they were missing. And so I was giving, Jonathan Frakes' character clues about, I'm here to help you find Data. However I have to do it. If I have to shoot you to do it, I will. But that was sort of what my episode was about, which I really put together when I sat down several months later to watch it. So anyway, it wasn't exactly Pinocchio time, was it?
There's still time.
Well, yeah, I definitely watching you has been one of the great joys of this show. And I would say that, honestly, you're probably my favorite villain on The Next Generation. I know people will have a lot of debate for that and argue there are other villains.
He's a very beloved character.
I would say that you are my favorite because I like complex characters. I like smart characters. I like witty characters. And then I thought also that the real twist on this episode was that you had a dream to find, to be with your love and go back to Earth. And I was like, well, that's kind of not that's not the worst thing. I can kind of, I can
totally relatable, right?
That's reasonable.
Exactly. Yes. I mean, it's extremely human of him to put it. I mean, it's just, he wanted everything that they had. It's what he kept saying to them. I want what you have. It's interesting because I thought there could be, someday maybe there would even be a follow-up to, what was it? It was Harker who said, go to Maris too. They're nice people there.
Yeah, I thought that would be a follow-up too. Yes.
Yeah, and I thought, wouldn't it be interesting? But then Stephanie, God love her, Stephanie came to a convention 3 years ago, maybe. It was the first time she'd been invited That was the first time she came. She was absolutely appalled by it. She just said, "What the hell? These people are insane." And she just
Welcome to fandom.
I said,
What?
this is your family, girl. These are people who love you. And she has retired completely from the profession. She lives in Mallorca and she will not leave home.
Wow.
So I think she's been invited back several times and she just thanks them kindly and says no.
Mhm.
At least that's what I've been told.
Well, why would you want to leave Mallorca anyway?
I know, exactly.
Gorgeous there. But Daniel, this has been the thrill of a lifetime. It's been so wonderful to have you.
Pleasure.
Incredible character, incredible actor. You've charmed us out of our seats, both as an actor and as a guest on our show. We can't say enough of our appreciation for you. So thank you very much for hanging out with us for a bit.
Oh, it's been my total pleasure. I hope to see you at some conventions. I hope to meet you in person and we can sit down and have another chat someday.
That would be a real honor.
Yeah,
all right.
It's going to be great.
Absolutely.
All right, everybody, stick around. We've got a lot more coverage of this episode. We'll be right back on The Seventh Rule. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to The Seventh Rule with Sirach frickin' Lofton.
Hello.
Here are the trivioids of the week, everybody. They go a little something like this. By the way, God, Daniel Davis was just the coolest guy ever.
Yeah.
We were like basking in the afterglow of hanging out with Daniel Davis for the last 15 minutes. So here are the trivioids. Sherlock Holmes Program 3A has demonstrated some very curious anomalies. The Enterprise has arrived at the Deuterian I can't even say this. The Enterprise has arrived at the Detrian system to observe a unique celestial event, the collision of two planets. Captain Picard tosses a book out of the holodeck. Professor Moriarty recognizes policemen in any century. Professor Moriarty would like to go above deck of the Enterprise. Lieutenant Worf can't launch 4 Class A probes. A deadline has a wonderful way of concentrating the mind. Professor Moriarty is brilliant in any century. Countess Regina Bartholomew went on safari in Africa with her uncle. Captain Picard can see Countess Bartholomew is a woman not only of breeding, but of wit and sagacity. I had to look that one up. All right. So, Sirach, I'm going to be honest with you. This is another one of those episodes that really kind of grew on me this time around. So much so that I feel like this episode took the biggest leap up of any episode that I had seen in the past. In the past, you see something, you remember it, you think about it. I hadn't seen it in 20 years or whatever it's been, maybe once in the last 25 years. I watched it again today and I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Not only is this a good concept that I remembered and liked, but I actually really just enjoyed the episode through and through. The guest stars were unbelievable. However, you've never seen it before. So I really want to know, what did you think of this episode?
Yeah, this was, look, anytime you get Barclay in an episode, it's like you're getting something good. It's like, all right, off top, it's a treat. It's
That's
like
a good point.
As soon as they said Barclay's name, I was like, is this a Nam Barclay or is this
are we getting
Barclay, right?
another? Because you're right.
Yeah.
Barclay episodes are quality episodes.
Right. So right away, as soon as I see him, I'm like, okay, this is going to be good. My wheels are spinning, so I'm thinking, where did we last see Barclay? What is his mental state at this point? Because he's up and down, and you never know which Barclay you're going to get. Right? Is he settled into his role, or are there machinations of things going on in his mind? So part of me actually thought that this was going to be more Barclay centered, because I thought Barclay was going to be going to the captain to say, hey, Moriarty is actually real. And when they go to check, he's not. And
it's another nutty Barclay episode. Oh, that's just Barclay.
Yeah, exactly. He's always making things up in his head or whatever. And so I thought that's where we were going in the beginning when they brought Barclay into it. So I was actually surprised that he actually this played out for real, and he really wasn't too elementary to the story so much. It was
Did you
really
just
more
say elementary?
elementary, my dear. So yeah, I thought this episode was fantastic. I hadn't seen it before. Just, definitely seen Moriarty before in that other Sherlock episode we saw. But again, like I told Mr. Daniel Davis, I think that his performance was excellent, and there's moments when you're cheering for him, and there's moments when and to me, that's like the Gold Dukat effect. There's moments when I'm watching Dukat where he's making a reasonable, rational request that is understandable and relatable to almost any sentient being. Like you're like, okay, he's a father who's caring for his daughter, or whatever the moment is, and you start to see some humanity in him. And I think that this Moriarty character had much more of that, actually, as far as humanity in him. There was a level of it looked like he wasn't trying to play a game. That was the beautiful setup of
Yeah,
it.
the earnestness of it, that he's coming out, he's just like, look, by any means necessary, I want my life, I want my freedom, I want my pursuit of happiness, and either you give it to me or I figure out a way to make you give it to me. And it's all very, as you said, reasonable. It's understandable. It's relatable. We get it. And before we get into that, though, a little bit more on Barclay, I liked that this was not a Barclay-centric episode. Now, Barclay's one of my favorite characters, but what this tells you is the episode doesn't have to be about Barclay. In fact, it's better that it's not, because that means he's now part of the crew. He can now be this recurring character where it's not just like a one note or a one trick pony.
Where
Or,
he's the anomaly. Where he is the anomaly, right?
Exactly. Now he's part of the solution. He's part of the team. He's part of the crew. He's not the wrench in the spokes,
Yes. Yes. So that was a pleasure for me because, I like to see him act, but I also like to see him being involved in the solution as well. So
Totally.
Perfect for me. Look, like I said, he comes out in the initial Moriarty appearance with Barclay in that scene. Moriarty is saying, yes, well, I don't want, he's not playing the Shakespeare game at this moment. I mean, not Shakespeare, the Sherlock Holmes.
Right.
He's not, this is not about solving a crime. We're not talking about the Elizabethan period or this period or that. This isn't about, trying to stump you. It was literally about his own freedom, his own, sentient experience. And so that's where I mentioned to Daniel about, I liked how Picard, and it was interesting for him to say how much Roddenberry was protecting Picard's legacy. And that's what I noticed is if you've noticed when we've been doing the recordings and I keep highlighting how they're writing for Picard. I keep saying, if you want your captain to look good, if you want him to look righteous, if you want him to look moral and principled, and these are the ways, this is how you're supposed to write for your captain. And you can see they are protecting Picard based on what Daniel was talking about with Roddenberry's statement that Picard never lies, right? So he was protecting his integrity of truth telling. Like, even though he told you this 4 years ago or whatever season it was, he's still going to honor his word because he doesn't lie. He doesn't say, I'll do something and he doesn't do it. So that's a reputation thing. That's protecting Picard's reputation. That's what Roddenberry is doing in that moment with that keeping of a promise. And the second thing he's doing is also honoring and respecting life form. When Moriarty makes the declaration that I am life, that I think, therefore I am, and mind over matter, and
suddenly Picard needs to take this seriously.
So Picard can no longer just say computer end program and make this go away really quick. Now it's like, hold on, our mission objective is to explore new life. Our mission objective is to engage with, explore, and find new life and see what that experience is about. And so it becomes priority number one to protect this possible new life form, right?
Absolutely. And I appreciate you saying things like that, because this is just further opening my eyes to the beauty of this episode. That is their principal guiding, mantra, right? And even if we, the viewers, and Picard, the captain, and Data, the android that knows everything, even if everybody says, no, this guy's wrong, he's just a holodeck character, it's not true, it's not real, we'll figure it out. Just the fact that he's saying this, they have to explore this. It's like a doctor who's got a dying patient and they say, hey, we've got this exploratory thing that might save the life. You can't just say no. This is it. Your entire job is this one thing. You have to take it seriously, this proclamation seriously. And I think that's a really good point, is that stops Picard in his tracks. He says, okay, well, we have to address this. And, also in what I was saying earlier, I love Regina. Like, she was, that was something. It's so funny. I love Regina.
Yeah.
And when I look back at this, episode, I remember how smart this episode was, because what made it so intelligent, on the surface, was just this idea of the holodeck within the holodeck. And then even at the end, Barclay has that amazing moment where he just kind of goes, computer end program. He's like, okay, just making sure. We all kind of do that. We all do that with Barclay sometimes. We're like, let me just make sure. And I remembered, the two characters, Moriarty and Regina, Countess Bartholomew. But what I did not remember, or what I just realized today, was just how amazing that actress is. What was her name? Stephanie Beacham. I'm watching her, and clearly she's classically trained. Clearly she's theatrical, and her character, doesn't get explored a ton, but she is acting the hell out of that character every millisecond that she is on the camera. She had a little bit of Jonathan Frakes in her, in that she assumes that the camera's picking up every single reaction she's doing, because she's right. And I could not stop watching her with every, she has, and sorry, I'm going on a lot on this, but she has the thing that I've seen one other time, and it was with Michelle Hurd, where the two of them, it's almost as if they have their life force or their positive energy that just precedes them, that's right in front of them, and you're watching their positive energy or their good energy or their theatrical energy that's right in front of them, and because they put it out there. It's like they've got their soul right there bared in front of you. And I'm watching this lady do this, and I was just truly blown away by her charm, by her expressions, by her willingness to just give it all to us and the camera. I was just really impressed, and I completely missed that the previous time or times that I watched this. So shame on me for that, but big kudos to her for really giving it to us. I told you I love Regina.
I can see.
It was amazing.
It seems like Regina blew you away. Let me just say, I did think she had an amazing performance, and there is something really magnetic about her performance, right? But in general, I thought this entire episode had that for me. We always talk about Brent Spiner, but like when Brent Spiner makes a switch from the Sherlock voice back to the Data voice, it's so seamless.
Yeah,
it's so amazing, right? To me, because he's using this accent, this Sherlock. It's a slightly British accent. It's got it's very, and then he switches into the robot accent, which is not even his normal voice. So both of these are not his normal.
That's
tone
true.
Of
yeah.
voice, right?
Kind of like when he was doing the Western and he was just flipping back and forth there.
Yeah. So, that's not his normal talking voice. So he's going from one artificial talking voice back to the dominant artificial talking voice of Data. So I just think he's an amazing actor as well. We saw Daniel talk about that briefly, but he had Picard in here just making some great moments, and I at some point there's a moment when you start to suspect what is real, right? Because when the fake Geordie was being
Yes.
quiet while they were talking, I was like, all right, he's definitely not the real Geordie, because the real Geordie wouldn't just stand
And they're
there
like, "Can
quietly.
you excuse us, Jordy?" And he's just like, "Okay," and he walks away. And you're
Yeah,
like, "Okay,
yeah,
clearly
yeah,
NPC going on here."
yes, yes. That was funny. And then part of me was thinking, is that the real Picard though?
Mm.
Like now I'm thinking, who is real? You know what I mean? And so that was great. But then we got to see that deductive game that they played. They basically tricked the computer, which was they tricked Moriarty in his own game, which is
Super
beautiful
smart. Yeah.
because he doesn't know that he got tricked. Even that's the other.
He's living out his happy ending, so to
Yeah,
speak.
yeah. So it's pretty. Yeah, his happy ending with his love Regina.
Right. And so they're off exploring the cosmos, and Barclay at any point can just plug that in to the holodeck, and we can check in on them. Be like, "What's up with you guys? Where have you been? What have you been up to?" And they're like, "Oh, we've taken over the Dominion." We're like, "Sure you have, bro. All right, off."
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, that was a great story, great ending, perfect Star Trek for me. This is it checks all the boxes for good Star Trek in my
I
opinion.
agree.
Makes you think. It takes you on a nice journey.
Right.
And it wasn't over the top with the Sherlock stuff. It wasn't too overly Sherlock. It wasn't overly anything. Actually, it was pretty believable all around.
Yeah, you didn't need a battle. You didn't need war or aliens or anything. I mean, this is a bottle episode, a ship in a bottle episode, and
no fight scenes.
It at no point did it get slow or boring. It was interesting. It was charming. It was fun. It had some aha moments. There were good twists. I mean, no notes. This is
super
good
long
stuff.
intro too as well. I noticed that as far as the geometry of how they put the episode together. The intro, the opening scene was rather long for an opening scene, and sometimes it's just. I think last time we were watching an episode and it was just like, Picard, you've been relieved of your job.
And that's it. 6-second intro. Yeah. Speaking of 6 seconds, it's time for the home run of today's episode. Please, at home, don't try to figure out what I meant by that, because I didn't mean anything. I was just trying to do a segue. Who gets the home run of today's episode, Sirach Lofton?
I'm going to go ahead and just give it to our Professor Moriarty. I think it's Daniel Davis's performance was just exceptional in this. I think he's just masterful. I would say, as far as the most memorable kind of villains that I can think of on this show, it would be him and Q. I know maybe Q is not a villain per se, but let's say antagonist.
Mm-hmm.
I would say he's up there as far as all-time interesting, dynamic, well-acted, well-written for characters who play antagonists in this show. So I want to give it to home run to Mr. Daniel Davis.
Yeah, me too. Easy answer. I mean, the writing was beautiful. It was perfect. Again, like I said, no notes. But Daniel Davis gave us a performance that is so memorable that 3,000 people will give him a standing ovation.
Yeah.
When just
and what I want to add one other one too. Rene Echevarria. We didn't say his name enough, but he wrote this episode. The language, the dialogue was amazing. I really loved the whole. Like you mentioned Stephanie Beacham's performance, but when she starts talking about going to Africa and having warm trousers the whole trip and just
that was really nice.
It was interesting, and just the backstory and the language of this was excellent, so I want to give Renee huge credit for just giving us a very well developed, well rounded. I couldn't find any holes in this episode.
Yeah.
It just It was just well completed. It was complete and it had message in it and a great ending as well.
Completely agree. Also, got to give a secondary home run to Stephanie Beacham. Like I said, I was not prepared for, because I didn't remember it, but I watched her. I was like, oh my God, she is, well, I don't remember exactly what I put in my notes, but I said Regina is so fucking charming. That's what I said. I was just like, I don't know why I didn't realize this before, but she was phenomenal. So great stuff all around. What a good episode. Here are some other people that are great all around and extremely charming. Their names are Dr. Anne-Marie Siegel, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackman Tom, TJ Jackson Bay out in Missouri, Titus Muller, Dr. Muhammad Noor, Anil O. Palat, Joe Balsarati, Mike Goo, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, The Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Jake Barrett, Henry Unger, Allison Leach Hyde, Julie Manosfi, Jed Thompson, Dr. Susan V. Gruner, Glenn Iverson, Dave Gregory, Chris Sternett, Greg K. Wickstrom out in Hawaii, Cassandra G., Chuck A., Chris Garris, and Mr. Charm himself, Jason M. Oken. All right, everybody, stick around. We've got much more to discuss on the free-for-all. We will be right back on The Seventh Rule. Well, hi there, everybody. Welcome back to The Seventh Rule with Sir Rock Lofton. This is The Free-for-All with Melissa L. Lungo and her Picard shirt. Allison Leach Hyde is also here. Oh, she's wearing a shirt by Walking Art made by Melissa as well. Carrie Schwent literally just gave us the play-by-play on the final moments of the regular season for the Chicago Cubs. She's right outside of Wrigley Field. Chuck A. is wearing an authentic Seventh Rule shirt. And the Dark Lord, Chris McGee, has his isolinear chip Seventh Rule shirt as well. All right. Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score.
I'm going to go around an 8.5.
Interesting. Does anybody else have any guesses that doesn't already know? Melissa has the worst poker face ever.
About 8.2.
Uh-huh.
I'll go with 8.3.
Any thoughts on it, Crafty? No,
she knows already.
Okay. Sirach Lofton, that sound means that you hit exactly correct.
Bing, 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 bing.
5. There it is. Magic. And Chuck and Chris weren't far off either. All right. Non-appearance mentions. There was a Sherlock Holmes mention, but we've never seen Sherlock not played by Data, so I don't think that's a non-appearance mention.
But I got one. Maybe Melissa too.
And Allison.
He tells Barkley about his hostage.
Yes.
That would be Dr. Pulaski.
Yes,
you are so right, you guys. That's perfect. That's a great one. I didn't even think of that.
Ding, 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 ding.
I'm gonna edit this later and make it seem like I remembered that.
This is the last time you mentioned in the series too.
Yeah.
Oh, Pulaski, really? Great.
Mm-hmm.
But in my headcanon, Pulaski is actually serving with Jellicoe on the Cairo.
Ooh,
nice.
Oh.
That's in my headcanon, because I think the two of them would actually be a couple. Jellicoe and Pulaski.
Mm-hmm. Yep. He loves 4 duty shifts, and she's like, as many shifts as you want, bro.
Exactly.
That's what she says. Do we have any, I don't know what that means, any some kinds of or some sorts of, Chris McGee?
I didn't hear any this time around.
All right.
Oh my gosh.
And he says, I prefer a certain formality on the bridge. And she's like, I'll be as formal as you want, sir. All right. So I don't know what that means either, Melissa. I'm sorry. Will you please get us started off on the right track by telling us what you thought of this episode?
You enjoyed this episode. Oh my gosh, I had so much fun watching this episode. I could watch it again and again and again for several reasons. One being Barkley, two being Data, three being Moriarty, four being Picard, and five being the amazing Countess Regina Bartholomew. Oh my gosh, she was fantastic. I just loved her. I loved her in the scene where she was telling Barkley about her trip to Africa and how she made him giggle a couple of times, and it was so cute. I had to rewind it a couple of times because the way she said "teetsy fly" and then the way he went it was so freaking cute. And I like that Barkley was included in the episode, but it wasn't a Barkley problem. He was part of the solution, which made a lot of sense. Moriarty was great. Oh, and I learned a new word, sagacity.
Yep, I looked it up too.
Sagacity. It's like, ooh, that's fancy. Thoroughly enjoyed this episode. There was something else I was going to mention, but I forgot what it is. However, Eve said that she thoroughly enjoyed this episode too. And she also mentioned that she misses Dr. Pulaski.
Oh, come on. Nobody said that.
Eve said that.
I'm just kidding.
But there's a lot more to say and things left unsaid. I have some questions for things left unsaid. So if you're a patron, look for that. If you're not a patron, become a patron so you can watch it.
Great stuff,
Great
as always.
episode.
Thank you very much, Melissa Longo. Allison Leach Hyde, IDIC. What do you think of this episode?
It is a fun episode. You know, we're kind of led down one path and revealed to be over here, and it keeps you guessing, and wonderfully acted by everyone. And I concur that the Countess is like such a fun surprise. She is wonderful. I think Stephanie Beacham did a great job as the Countess and was kind of like the highlight for me because she was wonderful. And great hat. I mean, sometimes an entire character can just be in a hat, and I'm sure wearing that hat was great. And yeah, I mean, when Data figures out that they're still in the holodeck just by throwing something to Geordi, like, that's not right. My friend doesn't do that. Like, no, he's the other one. Most of us wouldn't notice, you know, it's like that, but Data would. So I thought that was a nice catch. And like the first time I watched this episode, I mean, way back, you know, as a child, I still remember when Barkley says all Sherlock files. I'm like, no, don't do that. Why didn't Geordi say not all of the ones? Don't touch the ones in protected memory. Do the others. If he just would have had a little heads up on this, we wouldn't have gotten this episode. But it's a fun episode. And I think it's really clever too, how they use the ship in the bottle to make a ship in a bottle and save the day. So enjoy it. It is a ton of fun.
Thank you very much, Allison Leach Hyde. All right. Chuck A is a TNG fanatic, but is he a fanatic about this particular episode?
Well, this episode is always one of my favorites. It was such a great script. The holodeck and the holodeck and the holodeck was a fantastic idea there. Dwight Schultz was wonderful as Barkley again, and as Melissa mentioned, it wasn't necessarily a Barkley episode entirely. I love the last scene where Picard says, "Well, maybe this is the we're actually on somebody's desk in a cube, and we're actually a part of a holodeck itself." And then at the end, Barkley says, "Computer end program." It was such a good scene. The Moriarty bit where he comes at the first part of the episode where he disappears and then comes right back. And, you said to yourself, well, let's see what he has up his sleeve, because, you could tell by the expression on his face. The Countess was just wonderful, as Melissa mentioned. I love the Data figuring out what was going on with LaForge, and then the information that wasn't on the transporter log. I thought Brett Spiner was just amazing again. He only did a little bit of the Sherlock Holmes, not as much as the prior episode, but he was really good in that. I really enjoyed this episode. One of the highlights of the 6th season.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Chuck A, aka TNG Fanatic. Chris McGee's the Dark Lord. He also has some thoughts on this episode, I bet.
Indeed, I do. I agree. It is a superb, if long overdue, continuation of Elementary Dear Data. Just absolutely worth the wait. As Chuck mentioned, that holodeck within a holodeck within a holodeck concept is so great. And it reminds me a bit of 2010's Inception. I wonder if it may have been at least a partial influence on that film. I love that Moriarty, despite his pledge of being reformed, stays true to character as a brilliantly evil mastermind that almost outwits his opponents. Speaking of the guest stars, Daniel Davis, of course, as you well know, once again plays Moriarty with the perfect mix of charm and ruthlessness, desperate enough to hold 1,000 people hostage just so he can be with his true love. Now, I will say there are moments where Daniel seems to act like a bit like he's on a theater stage, but maybe that's just the writing, or I'm just overanalyzing his performance. That's probably pretty likely. I don't know. Like everyone else, I loved seeing Stephanie Beacham as the Countess. I think she did a fantastic job. I also think she displayed a similar level of cunning and guile as Moriarty, but hid it pretty well from Picard and Barclay. And of course, speaking of, my favorite recurring character, Lieutenant Barclay. As usual, Dwight Schultz plays his character perfectly, and he really solidifies himself here as the go-to holodeck guy, which just might come into play in the future. Moriarty's claim that he was aware of time passing while he was in stored memory raises a whole slew of questions I'd love to know the answers to, but only if he was actually telling the truth about that. One never knows. And I'm sure it was no accident that Moriarty says at one point, "I'm afraid I can't do that," echoing HAL 9000 from 2001: A Space Odyssey. And finally, I love that Picard almost breaks the fourth wall in that final scene, which is a delightful way to end this episode where questioning reality is so prevalent. The memorable quote that came away with me. I love the quote, even though I hate the implications of it, even if it's often true. And that's Moriarty saying, "A deadline has a wonderful way of concentrating the mind."
Ain't that the truth?
Sure does.
Great stuff as always, Dark Lord. Thank you very much for that. So Carrie Schwent says she wanted to go last to give the crowd a chance to thin out, but I bet it's not that thin yet, is it?
Not a ton, but it's definitely been louder. So hopefully you guys can hear me okay.
We do.
I had to be here for this. If the game was still going, I had a spot all picked out inside the stadium. That probably would have been big quieter than this, but we do really nice for the teams and the things that we love, and I love both the Cubs and you guys. So of course I had to be here. And it's such a fun introduction of an episode. There's all the different layers that just make your head hurt and ready for the siren. And I'm pretty sure I heard somebody, I don't remember who said it, but somebody said that there was a glitch in the Matrix. Like that. The only thing I was missing from that line was a black cat walking down the hallway. Who knows? I'm an Anglophile. I love English accents for days. I enjoy Sherlock Holmes and all of that, even though murder mysteries kind of give me a headache. I still enjoy Sherlock and the many movies and series that they've made about him. They've all been fantastic. And Daniel Davis, actually was in one episode of the series that had Lucy Liu playing Watson. He was in one episode of that TV show. It was called Elementary. Highly recommend it. And I love that it's a nice lighter episode after the whole chain of command thing. And my headcanon says that they gave the Enterprise this nice, relatively speaking, safe mission studying this star, which they continue to do after Moriarty has gone on his way. They've backed up to their safe distance so they can continue doing that work and just giving everybody a break from the heavy for a while. And it's too bad we don't get more than just the hostage Nam for Pulaski. I kind of wanted it. More on Pulaski later, saving that for the Limerick. I think he'll get a kick out of it. But Stephanie Beacham, I watched seasons a couple of times of Sequest, where she was the doctor in season 1 of that show.
Oh, cool.
And that show had a talking Melvin. One of my impressions, Jonathan Brandis. Fantastic sci-fi show. If you've never seen it and you're looking for something new, go check that out. As I was checking IMDb, I found something very curious, and I found it absolutely fascinating. The gentleman in the Sherlock Holmes story at the beginning of the episode, the actor's name is Clement von Frankenstein, whose family was friends with Mary Shelley, and that's who she named the doctor in her Mary Shelley's Frankenstein after this family.
Wow,
I found
cool.
that absolutely fascinating.
But he's got an extra C in his. He's got an extra C in his name, but yeah.
C in it, yeah. And he's actually got a small role in a favorite movie of mine called The American President. He plays the French president in that movie.
Oh.
Another fun flick. I watch a lot of stuff, and of course I love Barkley. I would take a whole series of Barkley if I could get it. And I'm definitely positive. My headcanon says that he took that little module, set it on a shelf in his quarters, and he made sure to save it when everybody had to unpack their stuff after generations when they moved on to the Enterprise E. And yeah, I love Barkley. And circling back to Dr. Pulaski, I have first had to include her in my limerick from Moriarty, because of course he's got 4 years worth of hanging out in the holodeck, so maybe he wrote a little poetry while he was waiting for Picard. Been awake and aware for all that time. Picard said he'd help me, but he lied. Where's Pulaski, that strumpet? Should I fill her with crumpets? At least I have the Countess by my side.
Very nice.
Trumpet.
Thank you very much, Carrie Schwent. You mentioned Elementary. One of the main writers on that show, everybody knows, is Robert Hewitt Wolf.
Yeah.
Good stuff there. All right. Jake's final take. Any final thoughts on this episode, Sirach?
Strumpet.
Yeah, I have a couple final thoughts. If Moriarty and Regina had a baby, it would be Morgina. That was my first thing. Let's see. Number 2. Every time I hear Heisenberg compensator, I think of Aaron Heisenberg. I can't not think of it's too close.
Yeah.
Sounds too close. I don't know how that ended up happening to be like that, but it's just like it feels like they're saying they might as well say Aaron Heisenberg. When Stephanie Beacham was telling that story about Africa, she mentioned that she got to wear trousers the whole week, and I thought I liked that line. I don't know why, but I liked the line, and it made me laugh a little bit, because relative to that time period, that's a big deal, right, for a young girl at that time. So I just thought, oh, that's pretty cool that they dropped that line in there. When they did the throwing whatever they threw out of the holodeck and it disappeared, that was a cool little special effect that kind of made me. I always wonder, where the threshold of existence is in the holodeck, and they did a nice little shot of that to show, past that point, things will not materialize and exist.
Hmm.
I notice also that the passage of time was really relevant to the story. So it was because Moriarty experienced the passage of time inside of the program that made them feel like he was feeling that he was being tortured, or that there was some kind of harm being done to him. So, and also was a qualification for his being a sentient individual, right? Because as sentient life, we also visualize the passage of time. And so I guess that in itself is a parameter, a definition for what it means to exist, right? To experience that. So I thought that was a nice kind of philosophical argument being there. Picard was tricked by Moriarty because he gave up his voice command.
Yeah.
And so he was outsmarted in this episode. Actually, Data was outsmarted too, because neither one of them picked up on it in real time, right? So congratulations to Moriarty. He did outsmart them. And then the last thing was Vincent Ogle, or Viscount Oglethorpe, a man who could bewitch any woman who breathed. I was like, that must be Riker. She must not have met Riker yet. Give her a chance. That's his name in the program. He's like, no, my name's Viscount Oglethorpe. So yeah, very good episode. I really loved it. I thought it was excellently written. And the performances were fantastic. Loved when Data did the whole switching from Sherlock voice to Data's voice. It was just really fun to watch. This is one of my favorite episodes. And I think Moriarty is a fantastic villain. I think that as an antagonist or villain, I really like what he does, because it's less abrasive to me than how Q comes across when it's a Q episode. It's less grandiose and more of a real chess match to me between intellectual people. So I really loved it. I would give it a 9, but I also want to say Alexander Singer, who directed it, whatever notes he was giving, fantastic job on his part too, because the flow was and there was never really a moment where you're sitting there waiting for more and it was dull. It constantly flowed. The action was good, and they didn't have many sets, but it still felt full. So love this episode.
Cool. Great stuff. I just thought of something funny, but I'll save it for things left unsaid, because it might not actually be funny. All right. Highly likely that it won't be. Thank you very much to Chris McGee, Chuck A., Carrie Schwent, Allison Leachhide, Melissa Longo, for myself, Sirach Lofton, Melissa, and Aaron Heisenberg. Thank you all very much for hanging out with us. We appreciate it, and we will see you next time. Until then, always remember the 7th rule.